Hello everyone, welcome to AdRAM Inquiries again. Today we will be going through the Regulating Act of 1773. The Regulating Act of 1773, I have picked up this up as the first, as a first video or as a first point of discussion in our series of polity and the politics in the politics basically not of India but in general, but specifically in context of Indian subcontinent, because this act marks the introduction of Western political ideas into India. Now, why this act was introduced by the British Parliament? Was the intention to modernize India? Was it to, bring about efficient governance? In India, was the intention behind Regulating Act of 1773 for the welfare of Indians? Or was it to promote the interest of British Parliament or British in general? Now, many of you might say the answer is the last one, to promote the interest of British Parliament or the British, but I will disagree to that also. And of course, all of these are incorrect. It was not introduced to modernize India in any manner. Neither it was introduced to bring about any efficient governance. Neither it was certainly introduced for the welfare of Indians, not to promote any interest of British. Then why this act was introduced? First of all, let us appreciate the fact that, let us go to the very basics. Why this? So who introduced this act in the first place? Regulating Act of 1773 was a brainchild of British Parliament. So it was not the East India Company, but the British Parliament who introduced this act or who legislated this act. Now, any act, as you might be aware, which is passed by the Parliament, it has a basis, it has certain reasons behind them, rationale behind them as to why this act was introduced in the first place, why there was a necessity to bring about this legislation. And these necessities, the prevalent condition to bring upon any act, is generally analyzed by a committee. So, like in any parliamentary democracy, or in fact not parliamentary democracy, in any form of parliamentary government, there are committees that are constituted, and these committees then analyze a particular condition prevalent in the society. Then they submit this analysis in form of a report to the Council of Ministers, which sometimes with the aid and advice of the whole legislature, or within amongst the cabinet, they introduce a bill which is up for a discussion in the Parliament, and then this bill, when it gets the consent, the required majority, depending upon the nature of the bill, it is then passed, and then it becomes an act. Okay. Now, so we'll be taking up what were the committees who were formed, but more necessarily, what were the prevalent conditions at that time which mandated for these committees to analyze these situations in the first place. Now, these, to understand and appreciate this fact, we have to go back to the prevalent condition in India at that time, as to what were the prevalent condition of India at that time, and what was basically happening in 1773 in India, specifically in context of East India Company. Because you will appreciate as we will proceed on, Regulating Act of 1773 was in a manner to control and regulate the affairs of East India Company in India. That is why it's called regulating, because the purpose of this act was to regulate the affairs of the company in India by the British Parliament. Now till 1772, I must say, and from 1600 when the East India Company actually arrived, and they started their operations, East India Company basically was like any corporate. Its intention was the maximization of profit in India, and of course to drain our resources. And so it had a pool of natural resources in India, cheap natural resources, right, which included of course the agricultural land, mines, natural water, and any other natural resource which they can basically exploit, plus cheap labor, and more importantly market, a vast market. So East India Company, it was basically a company who had these access to natural resources and land and mine and all of this, and the purpose till now was to basically exploit these conditions in India and to maximize the profit and to kick back some revenue share, of course, as tax to the British Parliament. This makes sense, right? Because suppose you are a company, so you open up a company and you open up a company in India. That company has its incorporation in India, and suppose you take operation to US, but that doesn't mean that whatever money you are going to earn in US, you are not going to pay tax in India. You will have to kick back the taxes. That's how it works, because you're incorporated in India. It doesn't matter that you have to pay taxes in US also. That's a different thing. And here US represents India and India represents the British Parliament, but India, they don't have to pay any taxes. But if really a company like say East India Company again comes to India for its operations from Britain, it will have to pay, East India Company will have to kick back taxes to India as well as to Britain. But currently it was only paying taxes to British Parliament. So the affairs were going rather smoothly for the East India Company till 1772, and the affairs were going rather smoothly for the company till 1772, or it basically, a little bit background, it came in 1600 and as traders, simply as traders, which just wanted exclusive right in trading. So what do we mean by exclusive right in trading? Because they were competing with other competitors. There were Dutch traders, French traders, traders from Portugal, traders from Denmark, as I said, Dutch, and whatnot. So they wanted exclusive rights in trading from the Indian rulers, and they simply came as traders. This was their intention. And of course, this was sanctioned by the British Parliament, by Queen Elizabeth I at that time. But something's changed in 1765. 1765 was actually a turning year for East India Company, which was till now, the company had purely trading functions. But in 1765, it obtained the rights of Diwani. Now, what do we mean by Diwani? Diwani means simply rights over civil justice and revenue. So please appreciate this subtle change of facts. So a company like East India Company came to India simply as traders, and it was this company who got the rights of Diwani. That is, now it has a say in civil justice cases. That is, suppose person A and person B has land disputes, so the company can now decide on these matters. and even revenue. Suppose there is a tax percentage fixed which a merchant has to give to the government, prevailing government. The company has say now in this tax percentage. Why this transition happened, as to how the company got the Diwani rights and why this transition happened in the first place. So it's just imagine like Adobe coming in India to set up a plant, and today in 2020, and all of a sudden, after like by 2030, now they have a right in Indian Parliament. They are giving their assent to bills and legislations and so on and so forth. So it will be very bizarre for us that how come Adobe, a simple company, an organization, has now political administrations, has legislative functions in the Indian Parliament. So it was quite bizarre. But we are not going to go into the realm of how and how, basically why India let company get Diwani rights. This has something to do with the Battle of Plassey and the Battle of Buxar. But let's not go into the history of it. Let's just concentrate on the context of why this Regulating Act of 1773 was introduced. And for that, it is important for us to appreciate that in 1765, by 1765, from 1600, so a good 165 years from here to here, the company managed to not only function as an exclusive trading operating corporation, but it also managed to have certain Diwani rights. Now, in order to further develop our understanding, let's please appreciate one more, two, or some of more aspects of how the East India Company was getting regulated. So, or it's functioning, I must say, not regulated, but it's functioning. So East India Company, guys, East India Company. Okay, so let me take it like this. Okay, give me 1 second. I'm going to change my pen. Yeah, East India Company. What was it comprised of? Of course, of people, right? But what kind of people? They were mercantile capitalists. Now, let's not like delve into like mercantile capitalists and everything, but the purpose of me specifying them not as simply capitalists, but they were mercantile capitalists in the sense that they had certain influence over king of the British empire at that time. They had some influence over the British Parliament, and they had also substantial influence over king. Now, in any political system, if you appreciate the transition from feudalism to democracy, or you will understand that there are two classes, basically king plus his nobles, which are nothing but these mercantiles, and then there are people who are vouching for democracy, and these are the people who are representatives of the people and leaders and ministers and so on and so forth. So there is a class struggle between these two classes, and the king was supported by these people. So till 1770, till 1765, the king was able to control the British Parliament to not regulate the East India Company. Why? Because East India Company was paying handsome revenues to British Crown, money. And here it gets interesting, guys. It was giving a lot of money, a lot of revenue to British Parliament. And whenever there was, whenever some members of the British Parliament, the cabinet ministers or so on and so forth, they wanted to regulate the affairs of East India Company, the king would simply say, well, they are giving us enough money, they are generating enough revenue for us, why should we disturb them in the first place? Why should we involve in regulating the affairs of East India Company when they are giving us enough money, when they are providing us enough wealth? What purpose will it solve? What do we gain by regulating the affairs of East India Company? Why do we want to regulate the affairs of East India Company? Why we want power over them when they're giving us enough money? This changed in the late 1760s. This particular phenomena changed. So please appreciate, most of the changes that happen in any society or in any like big social phenomena, big social changes in any society are, because of the reflection of a change in the economic system. So when there is some money or revenue or tax which gets disturbed, either the inflow or outflow, when it gets disturbed, then as a response to these changes and disturbances, certain steps are taken by a society or by a political system. So what happened really? The East, by 1773, the East India Company was in deep financial crisis. The company was important to Britain because it was a monopoly trading company in India and in the East, and many influential people were its stakeholders. So first of all, it had monopoly, right? It had the monopoly, and in monopoly in a very important sector, that is the Southeast Asia, which is very geopolitically very important region. It was geopolitically important at that time. It was geopolitically important today also, because geography is a feature in international politics which is a constant. It never changes. Rest everything can change, but not geography. The company was important to Britain because it was a monopoly trading company in India and in the East, and many influential people were shareholders. Now guys, before 1773, the company was actually paying close to 400 lakh pounds, right? Or the symbol of pounds, it's tough to, whatever. So 400 pounds annually to British Crown. But by 1773, the mismanaged finances made the company almost insolvent. So please appreciate that the fall of East India Company and the intervention of the British Parliament was because East India Company had mismanaged its finances by then. And it was almost at the brink of insolvency, or maybe it was insolvent at that time. And there were many other reasons. Some articles say that basically, East India Company is one of the most important trades of East India Company was tea, and there is some there are articles that 15 million pounds, right? 15 million pounds of tea was rotting in British warehouses because it was not able to sell that to the American market. Now, why all this happened? Why, was it just because of the mismanagement of finances, or were there any other factors also which led to the insolvency of East India Company and to its poor financial status? This is something different. We have to delve in a bit. We will have to deviate substantially from the topic. But let's just say that by 1770, by 1765 or by late 1760s, the East India Company was on the brink of insolvency, bankruptcy, and a company which was giving 400 pounds of worth of money to Britain annually, now was almost insolvent and had to request a loan from the British government so that it can operate for its operations. I believe the loan was I read it somewhere that it was close to 1 million pound or something. So just imagine now, right? So a company which, an organization which was now, which appreciate this, guys. Cabinet ministers in British Parliament always wanted to regulate the affairs of East India Company because they saw India as a potential colony. But the people, the influential shareholders of the company, they thwarted, that is, they prevented the cabinet ministers of interfering in India because they had their vested interests, of course, because they wanted to be a self-governing body, and they had influence over king. So, and king was able to shut up cabinet ministers because, why? Because the company was paying Britain 400 pounds every year, 400,000 pounds every year. Now, by 1760s, the company almost was bankrupt, insolvent, and had to actually apply for a loan from the British Parliament to continue its operation. And at this point, the influence of king was lost because the kings could not control now the cabinet ministers from enforcing a regulating act on the British Parliament, because the whole premise of stopping the British Parliament to regulate the affairs of company was that it was a profitable enterprise, it was generating a huge amount of profit, and it was doing just fine. But now it was not doing just fine. It has mismanaged its finances, it was on the brink of insolvency, and the king now was not able to stop the cabinet ministers of introducing a regulating act of 1773. Right? So what were the committees that were formed to analyze these aspects? So there were two committees. Number one was Select Committee, and number two was Secret Committee. So Select Committee and Secret Committee were, they analyzed all of these functions, all of these prevalent conditions that were there at that time, and these, based upon the recommendation of these two committees, two acts were passed. The first act granted a loan of around 14 lakhs right, that is 1.4 million pound, of course, to EIC, but at an interest rate of 4%. So the first act was that these, as I said in the beginning, two committees were formed, the Secret Committee and the Select Committee, and both of these committees gave their recommendation, and based upon their recommendation, guys, two acts were passed. First act said that, well, let's provide 1.4 million loan to the East India Company, but at an interest rate of 4%, and the second act was the, of course, Regulating Act of 1773. Right? And who was the PM at that time? The Prime Minister at that time of Britain was Lord North. He was a powerful Prime Minister who, of course, was aware that it was essential now for the British Parliament, for the British Cabinet in general, to regulate the affairs of East India Company, and it was now about time that they, start showing, British's interest in the administration and the political function of the East India Company, not just keeping themselves content with the revenue that they are receiving from them. So this was the concern of the cabinet ministers from long, and the British Prime Minister Lord North at that time, seeking the prevalent conditions of mismanaged finances of East India Company and its almost bankruptcy state, it seeked this opportunity and formed two committees which said, okay, first of all, let's give them a loan because they're still relevant. We cannot ask them to shut shops and come back to Britain and let us do the stuff. These people were still important, so they gave them a loan of around 1.4 million, more than what they asked, at 4% rate. And the second act was the 1773. In the next lecture, we will be discussing now in detail how the British Parliament, through the Regulating Act of 1773, attempted to regulate the affairs of East India Company. Right. So this was it. I hope you enjoyed this. Enjoyed this video. Basically, this video was to set the context of the introduction of Regulating Act of 1773. Why it's called Regulating Act. Now you must appreciate this. Like it's called Regulating Act because it was introduced to regulate the affairs of East India Company. And why 1773? Because by 1760s, the East India Company was almost bankrupt, and it was actually asking a loan of 1 million from the British Parliament, who in the first place, East India Company was in the first place supposed to send a revenue, or was actually sending a revenue of 4 lakh per year to British Parliament. So instead of giving revenues, it was actually now asking loan for its operations. It has mismanaged finances. Seeking this advantage, Lord PM North, it asked formed 2 committees which gave these recommendations, and then came the Regulating Act of 1773. In the next video, we will be discussing the implications and what were the provisions of this act, and how it actually was the first act in a series of acts that laid down the foundations of British Raj in India. And also, please appreciate, guys, how the 1773 Act helped right now to shape the current state of Indian democracy and the political system. So it's important to understand 1770 Act, Regulating Act of 1773, Pitt's Act of 1784, the Charter Act of the Charter Acts, the Indian Council Acts, the Government of India Acts. They are very important to understand because they help us to understand the prevalent political system that is in India right now. And it also helps to understand that why India chose these acts, and this political system basically is a system which mandates how the people of an area will be governed. So this is a very important social institution which tells you how you will be governed by the governing authorities. So these acts, understanding these acts and their implications and what profound impact they had on the Indian polity is very important, because this will help us to appreciate and understand that the prevalent political system in our India and how we should be able to give its constructive suggestions to improve it. So see you in the next part of this lecture series, where we'll be discussing in depth what were the provisions of Regulating Act of 1773. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.